Last night we had 30 minutes for 7 panelists. They were leading UN agencies. Today we have 7 panelists, young leaders, and having in mind that we are short of time, have 50 minutes before we go to visit the Zangilan Mosque and lunch. The hardest thing is when you're competing with lunch. But this time we are competing not only with lunch, but with mosque before that. So, I mean, it's really something that we have to be aware that we don't compete with such a mighty forces like lunch and mighty force. So, having said so, I just want to ask my dear panelists, in order to have the chance that some other people who are not so young, like you are, give you some mature questions on your fresh, young thoughts. 7 of you have 5 minutes each, right? After 4 minutes, look at me, because in 5th minute, I'll just cut you off, okay? And then we go. Now, for all of you, the same question before you have the questions that I will have for some of you separately. Because of the name of the panel, politics, lobbyists, youth, women groups, activism, and community involvement, I expect, starting with Mehri, to give us your perspective of what is the youth involvement that should be treated properly, what is especially the role of movement and generally activists in preparation for a very concrete project which is called COP29. Not in general, but for COP29. That's one thing. Second thing is, every country has some ways that they expect that will be attacked from the perspective of the country that has not so friendly countries around the world. So my question is very simple. There are a lot of potential attempts that this COP is going to be put in a context of there will be under attack of a lot of lobbyists. A lot of lobbyists who are representing big companies. I don't want to name them. Big companies that are in fossil area, who will be attacking Azerbaijan. Why you are, as Azerbaijan, that is also a fossil producer country, why you are now telling us stories about renewables? So how to prevent that in sense of having lobbyists lobbying against that unprincipled attacks that can be seen, envisioned on the horizon? That's second question. And third one is something that we were yesterday having in mind. We would like to see our young colleagues to say, what do you think would be key deliverables in bullets, in headlines from COP29 that would actually send a positive message and confront the negative campaign that would be resulting after the COP, whatever we do in COP? So what would be the key deliverables, and maybe what would be the key processes that can be opened on COP29? So pick up any of those questions, but fit in 5 minutes, okay? Mehri, since you are the young leader coordinator on behalf of NGIC, and everyone knows you in here, you will be the icebreaker. Please.
Sure. Thank you very much, dear Prime Minister, dear Excellencies, colleagues and friends. It's a great honor for me to speak today here in Zangilan on the important pathway to the COP29 and our collective fight, let's say, against climate change. And today I will focus on how diverse groups, I mean youth, women, activists, and communities are driving climate action, and why their involvement is crucial for our future. Young people around the world are increasingly becoming the driving force behind the climate action. And we are passionate, we are informed, and we are ready to make a difference. For instance, Reyhan Jamalova, who is a young entrepreneur from Azerbaijan, CEO of Rain Energy, a campaign that generates the energy from rainwater. And so I think that her innovation not only provides the renewable energy source, but also addresses the water management issues. And this is just an example of how youth are leading the way in creating sustainable solutions. A survey in 2021 found that 59% of young people worldwide are very or extremely worried about climate change. And this statistic highlights the urgent concern and necessity for immediate action. I mean, we are the generation who are going to face the brunt of climate change impacts. But this, I would say, this reality fuels our determination to fight for the climate, for the sustainable future. Women have also been at the forefront of the climate activism, often bearing with climate change impacts, yet leading with resilience and innovation. Consider Wangari Maathai, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who founded the Green Belt movement in Kenya. Her works on reforestation not only helped us to combat the climate change, but also empowered women through education and sustainable livelihood. I mean, women like Maathai show us that sustainable environment, and gender equality go hand in hand. Then activists, and they are tirelessly working to raise awareness and push for policy change. Indigenous activist Nemonte Nikimu from Ecuador. She has fought to protect Amazon rainforest and also the rights of indigenous people. I would say her efforts resulted in victories, significant victories in deforestation and against deforestation and exploitation, demonstrating the critical role of indigenous knowledge and innovation at the climate action. And while these efforts are inspiring, there is a pressing need for, I would say, new focus, comprehensive climate education. And I mean, climate change is a complex issue that requires well-informed, well-educated public to address effectively. So that's why educating all people of all ages about science, impacts, and solutions related to climate change is essential. And schools should integrate the climate agenda into their curricula. And community programs should be established to educate adults. And I think this approach ensures all the people, everyone, not only youth, is well prepared to participate at the climate action. So I would say, despite all these inspiring stories, the challenges remain. There are so many young people, young activists who are facing the lack of resources, support. Many women who encounter the barriers, to participate and have leadership. I mean, this is one of the global problems we are facing right now. As Margaret Thatcher said, women need to break this glass ceiling to get their voice to be heard. There are so many female leaders, female activists, and their efforts, their activities are not being considered as a part of the main solution of the global issues. But as a staff member of the Nizami Gençlik International Center, I would say that I'm so glad that we have so many female leaders around us. I mean, our members, our board of trustees members, mostly formed by female leaders. I mean, look at us, our staff members, mostly female. So while it's encouraging to see young people so active in this fight, we should remember that this responsibility should not be only placed on the shoulders of the youth. Current generation should also take accountability and lead with the same energy, with the same concern, urgency, and commitment. And as we look ahead to COP29, I think it's crucial to amplify the voice of women, youth, activists, communities. I think their insights, their experience are invaluable in shaping the effective climate policy. So we just need to make sure that everyone have a seat, every group have a seat on the main table, but not as a participant, but as the leaders. So, in conclusion, I would like to urge everyone to support, to recognize those who are fighting for our planet, because the future depends on those who are depends on actions we take now, today, and together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mehri. Really impressive. And you learned a new trick from yesterday. When you hit the 5th minute and when I almost say, then you say in conclusion. And then you continue a little bit. Excellent, thank you, well done. Excellent. Leyla Hasanova, here you are. Okay, Leyla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Pleasure to address this panel today and share with you some of the youth inclusion vision and activities that we're planning to do on our way to COP29. Today we are modeling the new normal of youth inclusion, and I've been thinking about what our new baseline is actually on combating the climate change. And I realized that it actually includes every table, every level, including youth and children, and that is how our new normal now should look like. We gather here with a shared purpose to confront the challenges posed by climate change and to ensure a sustainable future for all generations. However, it's the young people, my generation, who will bear the burden of the consequences of climate change for the longest time. The actions we take and the decisions we make today will have a direct bearing on whether children, youth, and future generations will inherit a world in which they can strive. As we draw up the solutions to address climate change, it's imperative that we involve youth now. We are not just the future, we are the present, and our voices, ideas, and energy are critical in shaping the path forward. Youth have and play a pivotal role in supporting governments to create more climate-resilient societies and economies. And our generation is uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between the global climate agenda and local communities, ensuring that the policies we advocate for are both ambitious and grounded in local realities. Young people have demonstrated how effective we can be in lobbying decision makers at local, national, and regional levels. Youth advocacy has led to significant strides in climate policies that consider local circumstances and contexts. From school strikes to international conferences, youth voices have echoed the urgency of climate action and the need for systemic change. But the contribution that youth do goes beyond just advocacy. On the ground, youth are driving adaptation action through multiple fronts. We are catalyzing sustainable behavior change within our communities, developing innovative and practical climate adaptation solutions, and fostering a culture of resilience and sustainability. Youth participation in climate adaptation is not just beneficial, it's a must and it's essential. To harness this potential, we must ensure adequate investment in building the capacity of young people. As mentioned by Mehri previously, young people should be effective drivers of adaptation efforts at all levels. This includes providing the necessary resources, training, and support to empower youth to take meaningful action. We need educational programs that emphasize sustainability funding for youth-led initiatives and platforms for young voices to be heard. Now turning and coming to the work that we are planning to do for COP29, Youth Climate Champion will be focusing on 4 main pillars. The first is enhancing the inclusion, participation, and representation of children and youth in climate policy and action through advocacy and awareness raising. The second one will be empowering young people to usefully contribute to decision-making on climate through capacity building and educational opportunities. Third one is elevating and amplifying the voices of children and youth on climate policy within the COP presidency itself and UNFCCC. And lastly, we'll be catalyzing action by leveraging the Conference of the Parties to advance, resource, and monitor youth-led climate action. This year and beyond, we will work to promote an inclusive process where everyone's voices are heard and that delivers inclusive outcomes based on fair and shared solutions. Unfortunately, youth have not previously been well represented in climate diplomacy, But that is changing a lot. Youth representation in formal climate negotiations has historically been limited because governments and international bodies often lack an understanding of how to meaningfully engage with youth in developing, implementing, and reporting on climate action plans. We are making progress, and as we can see, at COP28, institutionalization of youth representation in the COP process was made by formally establishing the role of the youth climate champion, which will serve as a missing bridge between the presidency and youth to flag the issues and concerns and challenges at the highest level possible. Youth have always been at the forefront of change, driving groundbreaking social, economic, and environmental progress. The same holds true for the urgent climate action needed to address the pressing challenges we face today. With the clock ticking on the climate crisis, we cannot afford to ignore the voices and perspective of young people. And we're looking forward to do it so in COP29. Thank you.
Thank you, Leyla. Impressive. Now, Pervana, the bar is very high. I'm sure you're going to meet it and jump over. Please.
Yes. Thank you. Dear moderator, I will talk about civil society perspectives in COP29 processes and how they contribute to overall agenda and COP29 presidency initiatives. As you know, civil society organizations and community-based organizations play a crucial role in making COP29 process more inclusive and participatory, while also contributing to more effective and equitable decision making. Their involvement can help ensure that the outcomes of COP29 are more transparent, representative, and also impactful. As civil society members, we are included in COP29 organizing committee, and we all four women-led NGOs are committed to bring local and grassroots civil society concerns voice to the forefront, ensuring that the needs of those most affected by climate change are heard and considered. We see our role as a bridge between civil society and COP29 presidency to deliver key messages of various groups, including marginalized populations, vulnerable groups, indigenous people are represented in the COP29 process. One of the COP29 presidency lead initiatives is human capital, which developed on principles of investing in human gender, youth, children, education, etc., for sustainable and resilient future where civil society can show up and promote intersectoral synergy between education, human health, and just transition. We believe that only through an inclusive COP we can develop and the right way. It is also crucial to increase awareness among general population about climate change and its impact on humanity, infrastructure, agriculture, and water efficiency. Azerbaijan has experienced significant climate change evident in extreme weather conditions, events, droughts, and the annual decrease of water in our rivers and Caspian Sea. By educating people on energy conservation and effective water use in agriculture and at home, we contribute to climate mitigation measures. The challenges, as you mentioned, and how we can defeat it. Public monitoring of environmental issues in the region should be prioritized. Our organization is focused on advocacy to prevent illegal mining industry in South Caucasus region, which harms the Caucasus Mountains, soil, rivers, transponder rivers, the biodiversity, and the Caspian Sea. Protecting drinking water is essential for human health, and thus we advocate for clean air and clean water, water security in the region. It is important to join everyone in efforts in climate action in the region. As civil society, we invite all stakeholders to prioritize and promote a healthy ecosystem in the region in preparation for COP29. We also promote Azerbaijan leadership in climate action, and as a result, recently we received supportive statements to Azerbaijan from foreign international non-governmental organizations regarding COP29 and the host country. In the last 4 months, more than 400 NGOs, international NGOs and social activists representing more than 70 countries issued joint statements and expressed their appreciation for the host country for their efforts and willingness to show solidarity for a greener world. The meaningful engagement of civil society, comprehensive multi-sectoral dialogue among member states, communities, major groups and other stakeholders, as well as UN agencies, is key to take us to a successful COP. Thank you very much.
Now we move to, let's say, another perspective that's coming from UK, from Poland, from India, and from China, regardless of the fact that these 4 young people were not only connected and rooted only in those countries. They have also a lot of other experiences by the experience they have in their own countries. So the same question remains for you, and I would like you, besides the questions that you are definitely going to answer, whatever I ask you, is given potential presence of opponents to the host nation. I mean, it should be carefully considered how to respond to hostile attacks on these, let's say, hostile groups that will be witnessing. What would be your assessment how to, especially when I was talking about a country like Azerbaijan that is known as a rich fossil producer? Now suddenly you are the role model of renewables. We know that there are so many things in this country that's been done and has been doing, and we saw this excellent example that Vahid was giving us, how in here, I mean, in this free territories, you're actually building the smart city, the smart society based on this. So, but still, the attacks will be there. So the question is, I mean, from your perspective, from your young perspective and global perspectives, especially having in mind that, Manas, you are coming from Geopolitical Advisory Group. So you're maybe the right person to see what are those aspects of this transition from geopolitical perspective that can be helpful in answering that question. So we start, Manas, with you. And of course, I won't give you another question because you don't have time for it. Okay, go.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you so much to NGIC for giving this platform to youth, but also thank you, Professor, for saving the hardest questions for the youngest people. I want to make 3 quick points today, and I want to start by being a little bit provocative. First, I actually think it's incorrect to think that the youth care about climate change. I think what the youth care about is a climate emergency. And there's a difference between climate change and a climate emergency. That's because 70% of youth that the United Nations polled in 55 different countries, 70% say that they're extremely worried about what's going on with the climate. Why is that? Why are we heading towards a climate emergency and not just climate change? Well, that's because the difference between UN targets of reducing emissions below 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius matters an enormous amount. I know it feels like just half a degree. What difference could half a degree make? Well, let me tell you. World hunger and deaths from starvation and malnutrition have been going down for decades upon decades. But that half a degree means that we reverse that global trend. They start going up. Half a degree is the difference between 70% of coral reefs dying and 99% of coral reefs dying. Half a degree is 1 meter added to global sea level rise. It's the difference between 6 million and 16 million people that live in coastal areas of their lives being endangered by just half a degree, 10 million people. You know, we throw out so many numbers in climate change negotiations that often kind of lose their value, but these are the people that are most impacted, 10 billion people. I'm looking at, the former prime ministers of Montenegro. That's almost 10, 15 times the size of Montenegro, 20 times the size of Malta, 3 times the size of Bosnia. So that half a degree matters a lot. And secondly, let me turn and talk about fossil fuel lobbyists. There's significantly more fossil fuel lobbyists granted access to COP28, the last COP conference, than almost every country delegation My friend here is a mathematician at heart, so I promised to give him some numbers. There were 2,500 fossil fuel lobbyists that were given accreditation in UAE, which is outnumbered only by one country, Brazil, which had 3,000. Right? Only one country had more people officially represented than the entire group of fossil fuel lobbyists. And that number is actually probably undercounted because sometimes countries bring these lobbyists as part of their official delegations. In fact, fossil fuel lobbyists have received more passes to COP28 than all the delegates from the 10 most climate vulnerable nations combined, which was just 1,500. So there are 2 times as more fossil fuel lobbyists than there are for the 10 countries that are hurt most by climate change. I mean, I think that's just an abomination. And that underscores how industry presence is dwarfing that of those on the front lines of the crisis. So when you ask me, what should we do in responding to some of these challenges, I think at the very, very least, let's at least give them a fighting chance. Let's at least give them something of an equal playing field. I think one of the really concrete goals that Azerbaijan can aim towards is to have at least as many representatives from the 10 most hurt countries by climate change as there are fossil fuel lobbyists. And lastly, I think we need smart goals. At a very basic level, education is a problem, right? We can sit here and talk about climate change with all our fancy terms and our jargon, but the people that are most hurt by climate change don't have the vocabulary to express that. They don't understand climate change in the same terms, right? You think about countries, Pakistan, Sierra Leone, Bangladesh. In all these 3 countries, the young people, less than 20% of them can accurately even define climate change. Does it mean it's not happening? Of course not. They feel the effects every day. But how do you expect them to raise their voices to lobby when they don't have education at the grassroots levels for these problems? The solution for that needs to come directly from the multilateral diplomatic organizations. And also, the climate emergency is a gargantuan problem that requires support to be mobilized, not just by national governments, not just by state or city governments, not just by the private sector, but also by active changes in our individual lives. How do you expect to connect with the people on the ground, people most affected, when the outcome of these negotiations often hides between 400-page communiques, between jargon, I heard the term NCQG, and a few of the leaders yesterday were asking what that meant, behind layers and layers of bureaucracy. I mean, just at the airport this morning, I was speaking to the former president of the UNGA, and we discussed the SDGs. There's a reason the SDGs actually made a difference, actually connected with young people and people around the world. It's because they were easy to understand. They were smart goals. When I was in high school, somebody said to me, Manus, when you plan for the future, you need to have smart goals. And I said, yeah, I have really smart goals. And he said, no, but do you know what that means? And I said, no. And he said, smart goals are S, specific, M, measurable, A, actionable, T, time-bound, R, relevant, right? Those are smart goals. How many of the goals that we're setting at COP29 are specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound? Right? It seems sometimes like world leaders have forgotten the very basic building blocks of what are diplomatic negotiations. So I just want to focus on those 3 things. Number 1, let's recognize that first and foremost, this is a climate emergency, not just climate change. Let's recognize the 70% of youth that are extremely worried about this. Number 2, a very specific objective that I've set out. Let's make sure that we give at least as much representation to the 10 most hurt countries by climate change as we do to the fossil fuel lobbyists. And number 3, let's make sure that the outcome of these resolutions isn't a bureaucratic 400-page communique, is rather something actionable that you can explain to people on the ground in Pakistan, in Sierra Leone, in Bangladesh, in small island developing states, the people who are worse impacted by climate change. Thank you very much.
Manus, okay, you did smart move. Thank you so much for this great presentation. And I saw a lot of people around this table who have, like myself, who have more years of experience than average of you panelists in here, years of lifetime. We learned a lot from you, at least I did so far, and I put a lot of things in my little black book. Thank you so much. And Klau, I move to you, right? Okay, let's go with the question that I already passed. What you can generally do as a young people?
Yeah, so I think that we actually already, I think we already actually have the answer in front of us. Like, literally in front of all of us, there is an agenda. And this has been super helpful for us to be able to navigate our discussions over the past few days. But similarly, agenda is an instrumental tool of power. During my studies political theory, I delved more into Steve Luke's theory of three dimensions of power. And one of the key things is figuring out what we put in the agenda, which things we discuss, and which things we leave behind. As we look towards COP29, as we prepare for it right now in this pivotal time, we need to make sure that those young voices are included in the agenda setting to actually change the power dynamics. Otherwise, we're just going to create conversations that don't really address the questions, the issues that young people are looking for answers. Climate change is especially important issue on that front because it affects all of us. As Leyla mentioned, it's going to be our generation that's going to be paying for mistakes or be celebrating the successes of whatever policies are going to bring from COP29 and the other climate changes policies. As we've seen over the past 2 days, climate change has profound economic, social, and political consequences, including food shortages, increased displacement and migration, greater conflict over resources, and health outcomes. One specific group is going to be the youth. And as a young leader, I feel obliged to represent and to discuss this a bit more. So youth involvement should not merely be a symbolic gesture, but it will actual change of power. 40% of the world's population is under the age of 25. They need to be truly involved in the decision-making process. The youth today, the good news is really informed and connected more than any other previous generation to this topic. They're leading movements, innovating solutions, and demanding accountability. And why? Greta Thunberg said that giving up is not an option. And I would like to highlight that point. We don't have other alternatives. Young people are fighting not only for the planet, but also for their own futures that they deserve and that they should have. Ignoring their voices mean missing out on their insights and solutions. And if we truly want to include the youth in our conversations, we need to make sure that they can help shape the agenda of the COP29. Similarly here, I really commend and applaud NGIC for bringing such a diverse group of leaders from Azerbaijan and worldwide to tell us, to be able to have a freedom to choose what we want to talk about. It's this microphone, is the attention that I have from all of you, that is the real power within that gesture, is something that matters. This is precisely what we also need to do for the COP29. And not necessarily only for the youth groups, but for all diverse groups that play a vital role in this climate change transition. We all need to take part in shaping the agenda for COP29 to ensure that we can have the open dialogue and focus on the issues that matter the most. And I think that COP29 could be really set a precedent. It could really increase the standard that we have for the inclusion and for the diversity in our conversations. That also will lead to more effective climate action, because that will increase the likelihood of successful implementation. If we figure out what are the issues we need to discuss, then we can start working on them, we can start discussing them. For example, the fact that we included healthcare, One Health for All, is a massive improvement, bringing it into the forefront of conversation about climate change. Again, bringing it to the agenda, that's what really changes the outcomes here. So as we prepare for COP29, let's commit to not just listening to the diverse voices, not just invite them to conversations, to sit down and listen what everyone else has to say, but really empower them. Empower them to figure out what we want to discuss, empower them to have the microphone, to have the time to speak, and be able to make a meaningful impact. Because as Mana said, it's a climate emergency. We don't really have time to waste. And if we don't start working on this now, we may not have time for it ever again. Thank you.
It's really impressive how little time you spend to say so much, which sometimes is opposite of what we do, who are much more experienced.
Yeah, but this is the generation of the SMS and the Twitter.
Okay, I will stop asking. I'll stop asking Noel and Chengkai questions about young people. I will just ask you about people, expert of the person, regardless of your age. So we are not looking. I mean, we're a little bit pushing, what young people, like you're a different world. You are actually like us. You are like us in the sense of your knowledge already and your ideas and freshness of your ideas. You are sometimes, or most of the time, at least much more fresher than we are with all our experience. Now, having said so, Noel, I'll start with you. How can use of technology can revolutionize climate change solutions? Let's go to technology, which is for the older people, right? So please, give us the perspective of real people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister, for this opportunity. I think you asked a very valid question. How do we leverage technology? And technology has two aspects to it. It has the science and it has the finance. And we need to address both parts of technology. Now, when I came here, I thought about what conversations have not been mentioned in our previous conferences, right, in the past 2 days. And I believe, despite the fact that we've spoken of science and finance, we really haven't spoken about how do we do it. What technologies do we apply? How do we utilize these technologies? Where do we utilize this? And for whom do we utilize this? We still haven't spoken about this. And so I'd like to share my few 2 cents. And before I do that, I'd like to say that I am neither an economist, I am not an investment banker, I am not a scientist. But it doesn't take a degree to have common sense. And allow me to share my common sense with you. Firstly, let's take an example of how we can use technology. The third pole of the world, that is the glaciers of South Asia, are going to dry up by 2050. What does this mean? This means that nearly 90 million tons of grains that are grown in South Asia will not have access to water. 2 billion people will not be able to grow anything there because there's simply no water to grow. How do we know this? Remote sensing data, satellite imagery. And what do we do? What is the solution? The same thing, remote sensing data. Today, we can use satellites to actually identify how much moisture is in the soil, how much water is under the ground. Why are we not using this? I mean, this technology is not even expensive. Once you launch a satellite in space, it all stays there for 20 years. You have the image coming in like live stream. It costs nothing, and yet we don't do it. In countries like India and Morocco, we're growing really water-intensive crops like strawberries, avocados. By the way, an avocado takes 1,000 liters of water to grow 1 kg. So before you have your avocado for breakfast, remember where that came from. It was not grown in your backyard. It was grown in a country like India that's extremely water-stressed. Now, we need to use outer space to further our technology and climate science. This morning, I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Jean-Pierre, and he spoke about how we put seeds into space so that we can induce mutations in them. These mutations are extremely crucial. We can have drought-resistant crops. We can create cotton that is not water-intensive. Just for example, it takes 10,000 liters of water to create 1 kg of cotton. That is 2,700 liters of water to create 1 cotton t-shirt. So before you throw away your cotton t-shirt, think about where the water came from. And it does not come from water-rich places. It comes from water-deficit places like Xinjiang, like southern Russia. It comes from India. So we need to talk about how we use science. And finally, and I apologize if I sound as like a lunatic, but we need to resort to asteroid mining. And this is not science fiction. This is reality. As of 2 years ago, we actually successfully mined an asteroid. Why is this important? Because asteroids have minerals. You don't need to spoil the earth. You don't need to dig it up to get minerals. And waters have a lot of water. And asteroids have a lot of water. You don't have to ruin the earth to get water. And this, I know now it's expensive, but I think this is worth the cost. It is worth paying this to have a future that actually means something to us. And I'll just add one more thing. Speaking of finance, the issue is not, of course we have to create enabling finance. We need to divert money where it really matters. But we also need to ensure that we don't create perverse incentives. Allow me to give you a few examples of what perverse incentives are. Now, I come from the state of Kerala in southern India. Now, if all of you perhaps didn't know this, but it takes 9 liters of water to create 1 bottle of Coca-Cola. That's 1 liter. Now, in Panchimada, in my village close to my house, the entire land has been drained away to create Coca-Cola. What do the farmers do now? Well, they can't do anything because there's no water. It takes 100 years to restore the same amount of groundwater that Coca-Cola used up in 10 years. What do? Well, what Coca-Cola did, I'll tell you. They used all the waste and they supplied it to the farmers for fertilizer. Sounds great, right? But this fertilizer actually had cadmium in it. So now the rice they eat there has cadmium in it. And once in a while, you have a train that goes a few kilometers away to take cancer patients because they ate cadmium-laden rice. So this is what we need to talk about. We need to divert resources where it really matters. We need to ensure that we don't create perverse incentive. Let me give you another perverse incentive that has been created. India grows rice. It's one of the biggest exporters of rice in the world. It takes an enormous amount of water to grow rice. India is also one of the biggest producers of soy after the United States and Brazil. It takes an enormous amount of water to grow soy. We grow flowers for some reason in amongst the most water-parched areas. Just to give you an idea, 24% of the virtual water that is exported in the world comes from India. That is amongst the most water-stressed parts of the world. 1.4 billion people need this water for bathing, for drinking, for basically surviving. And what do? We grow avocados and strawberries instead. We need to create enabling structures, not disabling structures. I'll give you another example, and it's not just the global south, it's also the global north. The Spree River in Germany, the only reason there's water in the river is because we are draining groundwater to supply the river. Why do we do that? So that we can have lignite mines. And once those mines close down, the river will have no water. What happens to the people who depend upon that river for agriculture, for basic things like drinking water? No answers there. And I know the oil industry is criticized a lot. I completely understand that, and I understand why. But this is a comparison. While it takes 9 liters of clean water to make 1 Coca-Cola bottle, it takes 5 liters of water to create 1 liter of oil. So the Coca-Cola industry is actually doing more to harm the environment than the oil industry. I think what is required is we need to leverage the oil industry to generate finance for the renewable sector. We need to create incentives and market forces. I remember in the conference yesterday or day before, somebody mentioned that let market forces do their thing and we'll have a perfect environment. Well, I just gave you examples of market forces. Nothing is happening. We need regulation. We need incentives. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wow. Okay. Now, after India, we have a competing nation in the sense of who has more population. We have Chengkai from China. Now, Chengkai, please give us a little bit your perspective on smart cities. Since we are here in Wahid and Faika, I'm sure are interested in having Chinese experience on smart cities because you are making it from the point blank, making smart city here in free territories. Smart cities, and tell us a little bit about your uptake on renewable energy in that context. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to put it on the record, I don't entirely represent China, but to tackle your question head on, representation matters. Getting a seat at the table matters. Being in the room where decisions are taken matters. And addressing to people, all of you, the leaders of national government, city governments, United Nations agencies, and international organizations, you, more than anyone, should understand the importance of representation. To the points about lobbyists, youth, women group activism, community involvement in climate action, representation matters. One more badges to get into COP for fossil fuel industry lobbyists is one fewer badge that allows those groups to get into the discussion. I remember I was privileged enough to be in Dubai for last year's COP. Spotting people attending different pavilion events is like playing the game Among Us. Perhaps some of the younger generation with me, but the game is designed for you to spot the imposters among the group of you. Spotting those people who are attending the conference not for the purpose we're trying to pursue, not there for a sustainable and resilient future. To be frank, everyone is lobbying for something in life. But all I can ask for is for Azerbaijan to make this COP to be the gathering of the lobbyists for the future, not the lobbyists of the past. Now, I'm grateful to be part of the NGIC Young Leaders Program, participating in Global Baku Forum, and this opportunity to focus on COP. But also recognize this is a privilege, so I extended the opportunity to ask my friend, what does climate change mean to you? And why do you think youth engagement should play a big role in climate policy making? It really boils down to three key words: threat, challenge, and opportunity. Now on threat, a lot of the young leaders have addressed the threat already. 1 billion children are exposed to extremely high climate risk due to extreme weather conditions or energy poverty. The threat is not only physical, but psychological and mental. We see climate anxiety creeping up our newspaper headlines. However, I want to look at the positive side, the challenge and the opportunity. Now, it is a challenge that we need to reinvent our civilization. The civilization is built on fossil fuel. If you think about the material we rely on so much, ammonia, cement, plastic, and steel, largely made of fossil fuel, we require next generation of talent to research and develop the technology that would allow us to reinvent our civilization. And young people has a huge role to play. It's a challenge of our time, call of duty, and mission of our generation. Now onto the opportunity. As the revolution unfolds, the green transition would create 8.4 million jobs for young people. However, if our current level of training and education persists, 60% of the young people will lack the skill to seize the opportunity. And more alarmingly, 70% of those jobs will go to men. We need to have gender equality in the future of our green transition. Now, there's a concrete way for us to go forward. That's why I want to focus on sustainable smart city as we gather today in a smart city, a new sustainable development that we're seeing unfolding in front of our eyes. Sustainable cities is really focusing on two key development concepts. That's sustainability, whether you integrate your air, water, waste management with low emission practices, and connectivity, where you are connecting people to improve the city's operational efficiency. And that's particularly important for young people. As a 25-year-old sitting here at the table, I thought I was the future once. But UN Habitat reports tell me by 2030, the urban population, 60% of the urban population will be people aged under 18. Think about that, just let that sink in. We need to create sustainable smart city for young people, of young people, and by young people. Now, vital part of this empowerment is give young people the proper education so they can become environmentally conscious citizens to understand how their action is going to impact the environment. And the current state, in a report in 2023, out of the 95 countries that reported their NDCs, only 24% mentioned the role of educating young people. Never to say there's not a single country that mandated climate change education in their national climate strategy. And I want to end on a quote from one of my favorite philosophers, Edmund Burke, who said society is a partnership of the living, the dead, and the unborn. So it doesn't matter whether you're a young person or not, whether you're a world leader, we all have that duty to maintain that bond and that partnership. And I think COP29 in Azerbaijan, we would have that opportunity. Thank you.
Well, first I want to really thank to our panelists. Now we have 5 minutes before we decide to start competing with the spiritual force and with the lunch. So whoever wants to compete, we have 5 minutes to do that. Anyone wants to have any question, comment? Yes, please.
Thank you very much from such excellent presentation of our young ladies around our table. And from our country practice and Central Asia region common and world practice, I could say that young people are becoming catalysts for change in the face of anonymous climate change issues. Their constant dedication and creative strategies influence effective action and raise awareness across the world. So I have some proposal. I have not question, but I have proposal to in framework of the COP29 in November to organize some pavilion of youth pavilion, as it was made, for example, in Sharm el-Sheikh, when it was a youth forum for defending ecology forum. It played important role as a for platform for engage with the policymakers and recognize it as change agents. I think this will be very important. Second, I will ask our Nizami Ganjavi Foundation to establish such platform for cooperation between youth of Central Asia and Azerbaijan, and maybe later transforming to Central Asia, South Caucasus youth cooperation. Recently, in March, in Uzbekistan adopted state strategy for involving youth in climate protection, the ecology, because our countries, region and whole, face it after independence, a big disaster, ecological disaster, disappearing RLC. That is man-made disaster, and we made more events to make awake the world population that this disaster nearest future will face not only developing countries, but developed countries too, and now we're witnessing this problem. That's why I think such our action will be very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now, Mamuna, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Before competition starts with Mighty Force.
Yes, thank you so much, the young leaders. We heard you. Yeah, we heard you. You want to be at the table. You want to get involved in the decision-making process. You want to be involved in the policy and strategy formulation. You want to get involved in the implementation of the program and the project. Forgive me if I ask you these questions. Do you have a concrete key ask, a concrete action plan with the roadmap, with the funding requirement, and other needs to be discussed at COP and to be tabled at COP and become the outcomes of the COP29? If you already have it, I would like to congratulate you, and maybe you can share a copy to us. But if you don't, I think you have said it, but I think now is to put things together and put it on the document to the COP29. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamuna. Now, of course, they don't have that document because that document is supposed to be produced by much bigger group of people and much bigger group of people than this table is only. So we are working on it, and I'm sure that they will do it. You'll commit yourself. I've seen they say clapping with their head, right. So you're going to try to make response to Mamuna question. So next time when we gather, hope we'll gather soon, and hope you will be involved in our working subcommittees that we are going to have as NGIC. So you will do it. We are running out of time. No worry. You will just get hard round of applause, and we are finished. Thank you very much.